Hey, Casey, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, it's a pleasure to have you. So for those of you who haven't met Casey yet, Casey Dyer's seventh book, Finding Fraser, a romantic comedy for grown-ups, has become a runaway bestseller, selling more than 40,000 copies in just 2 months. Right now, Casey is in the middle of her book tour, so I brought her here on the show to find out how she suddenly became an overnight success with her seventh book and what she's up to so you can learn from her success and model it for your own business and your own career. So Casey, I'm really glad to have you. Casey, are you there?
So I'm still working, but you have vanished.
Okay, I think we just cut out for a second. Are you?
Yeah, there it is. It says check your connectivity. My connectivity is fine. Like I'm on all bars here. Are you okay on your end?
Yeah, I'm good over here. So
yeah, did I disappear for you, or because
you disappeared for me? So I think
it's same here on this end. Yeah, you want to start again?
No, the intro is fine. So the audio guys will just edit it out. So you can just go ahead.
All right, that's good. I think maybe I won't move my head because I nodded the last time. I'm paranoid. Okay, fire away.
Okay, so I was just gonna say, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Tom. It's very nice to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us kind of about your background and how you got started as an author.
Okay, well, I've been publishing novels. My first book was published in 2001 or 2002. Before that, I was doing quite a bit of freelance writing. I was writing for newspapers, and I was producing a newspaper for my local village. So I've been writing for a long time. My first 6 novels are traditionally published, and they're all aimed at the teen or young adult market. So that's where I am. And then I've had this weird little experiment that's gone for number 7, lucky number 7, and I've got a bestseller in my hands. So I'm really excited about it.
That's awesome. And so you mentioned your first 6 books were traditionally published. What about this new one that's been done so well?
The new one is self-published. I've done it myself. So it's been, holy crow, it's been quite a labor of love, this one.
That's awesome. So that's really interesting. So you had 6 traditionally published books, which did, moderately okay, and now this new book is
I'm the quintessential Canadian writer. I have toiled in obscurity and poverty. Okay.
Awesome.
Lucky number 7, and I've got a bestseller in my hands, so I'm really.
Is your audio okay?
Yeah, my audio's doubling back on me.
Is your mic actually set up properly? Because if it's
do I need to do something else to set it up differently?
Is it plugged in?
It's plugged in. I'm going to just try unplugging and replugging.
Okay. Do you have 2 windows open?
Oh, that is possible.
Yeah, if you're watching it with the other link, you might have to close out the other link.
Hold on. I think I just have the one open. Hold on. No, you know what? You're right. There we go. It's okay. It was 2 windows open, so I was getting delay on it. Ugh, sorry. You guys will edit that out too, I hope.
Yeah, it's all good.
Okay, good. All right, we're clear now.
Okay, so that's really cool. So you've had
so I've had 6. I've had the first 6 novels were traditionally published. So I come to this one from a traditional background, which has really dictated the way that I've put this book together. I've gone in with extremely high standards.
Gotcha. So you've got high standards. So I mean, great cover design. Right. I mean, what else went into those standards?
Everything. I decided to do everything professionally. So I paid somebody to proofread it. I paid to have it edited. I paid to have it copy edited. The cover design, the digitization of the book, everything I've done. I've worked with industry professionals. That was really important to me because I wanted to make sure that the standards of this book were really high. Because I've worked with a lot of self-published writers in the past, I have seen some of the pitfalls of self-publishing because there are opportunities to self-publish where the product is does not come out looking anything but homemade, and that's not what I was looking for here. I really wanted to have make sure that I aimed for the top.
Definitely. So I mean, like, the blaring question on my mind, and probably a lot of people listening right now, is like, your story sounds like the exact opposite of like the traditional author, right? Because like, normally you think of, well, someone self-publishes their first 6 books and they do okay, and then they get they're saved by a traditional publisher, they get a big deal, and they become wealthy and famous and popular overnight, right? Yours is like the exact opposite. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, like what about having your book self-published allowed you to have better results?
Oh, I don't know if it's the self-publishing or if it's the story. I don't want to make claims here for things that didn't happen. And a lot of publishing, as you know, Tom, is alchemy. And so you have to have a very magic mix of the right story, the right circumstances, the right people who are helping you, and the right market. And it's like all those things came together for me in this particular circumstance. I've been really lucky in the past. I've my stories that I've written have fallen in front of the right eyes. I was able to get traditionally published. My first 4 books were published unagented, and then I was able to pick up an agent to help me with this work. So I have definitely toiled through the usual channels to get published in the traditional way. I just couldn't sell this story. I couldn't sell it. And I really believed strongly in it. I have a friend who is very successfully self-published, and because I come to this from traditional publishing, that's my instinct to go that route. And so I really tried to go that route. And then when those doors didn't open for me, and I sat down at a writer's conference last year with a friend who said, "You're crazy not to try it. You've got the skills at your disposal. You've got a place in the industry where you know people who can help you do the best possible job. So go for it and see what happens. You've got nothing to lose." And so that's why I did it. And that's what's happened. It's just been amazing. It's been fantastic.
That's awesome. And so you mentioned like the market was right for you. Is this a different market than your past books, or
Yeah, it is.
You used to?
Yeah, it is. I'm not so sure that it's a different kind of story. I write adventure stories, and sometimes they have time travel, and sometimes they are contemporary, and sometimes they are about grown-ups, and sometimes they are about kids. And this one happens to be a contemporary story that does not have time travel, but it's set in a universe where there is already an established fan base. So can I talk a little bit about the story? Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so Finding Fraser is about a young woman named Emma Sheridan, and things have gone like seriously wrong in Emma's life. She's a bit of a flake, and so she's lost her job. She's just turned 29, lost her job on her birthday, and has had a recent divorce. Has unlucky in love, and Emma's a reader. That she's always been a reader. And when her best friend, when things went wrong for her friend would go out to the bar and get drunk. But that was not Emma's route. She would just go home and lose herself in a good book. And so her favorite books were the Outlander series, because they involved time travel and stalwart, amazing, upstanding young hero. And she never met anyone in real life that matched up to the hero in this book. So she decides on a whim, on her birthday, on a bad day, on the first page of this book, to sell everything and run off and find her own version of this fictional character in real life. So it's an adventure story. It's what I write. It's an adventure story for grown-ups. It's about a young woman looking for love, but she's also, she's not just looking for love, she's looking for Emma. And so she runs off, sells everything, runs off to Scotland to try and find a contemporary version of this 17th century warrior she's fallen for. So to bring that back into the marketing realm, the book that the character that Emma fell for, the Outlander series, is a very popular series. When I wrote this book, I finished this book about 3 years ago, and it was a really popular series then. It was written in the 90s. Diana Gabaldon is the author. She is a lovely friend of mine. And so I have seen the world that exists around her too, which is an interesting world. She's built quite a fandom. And that has been.
Fiance loves her books, by the way. She has every book in the series, and she's just always like in her Kindle is reading it.
Yeah, exactly. So like once you read Jamie, everybody falls for Jamie in these books, right? So it's been really interesting because it could have gone either way, because somebody might think that this was presumptuous. The book that I've written is an homage to this character. my character, Emma Sheridan, loves Jamie Fraser and goes off to find her own Fraser. And that's the premise of the story. So essentially, I'm sort of walking in the footsteps of Helen Fielding, somebody like Helen Fielding, who took the Pride and Prejudice story and turned it into Bridget Jones. I'm not retelling the Outlander story by any stretch of the imagination. These are not books that are like Diana's books in any way. It's about a character who loves a character in a book. And so she goes out to seek this character, a human version of this character. So it's been really interesting because, as I said, it could have gone either way. Diana Gabaldon has a huge, massive fan group. And when I wrote the book, they were all, avid readers of her book. Since then, the book has been turned into a television series that has become very, very popular and has exponentially increased this level of fan support. And this was not the case when I wrote the book. But just because of luck, it's been a massive benefit for me because, well, I mean, as I say, it could have gone the other way. People could have read this book who were from her fandom and said, well, this is a terrible book, and spread the word that way. But instead, it's worked in my favor because people who love Jamie themselves see themselves in Emma. And so they tell their friends, look, this is exactly what I would have done if I'd had the opportunity. And it's fascinating, Tom. It's fascinating, the feedback I'm getting from readers. Just to give you a comparison, my very first book that came out in 2002, it's called Seeds of Time, still, I think, among the most popular of my other 6 books. It's actually set in Scotland, in the West Highlands of Scotland, during the height of the Black Plague. And really, really popular book for, about grade 8 level kids, 8th grade. They like to they like to explore the story. They like to think about what it was like to live during that time. I have 12, I believe 12, the last time I checked, comments on Amazon about that book. Finding Fraser came out May 15th, so we're almost at 3 months, and I have 650 comments on Amazon. So it's just been it's a completely apples and orange kind of experience. And that I totally attribute to word of mouth, because people like this story, they see themselves in Emma, and they tell their friends, and their friends tell their friends. And I'm very accessible on social media, and so I talk with everybody too. Anyone who wants to talk to me, I talk back. And so I'll chat with them about the story, and everybody can relate. Anyone who's really a reader can relate to falling for a character in a book. I mean, from Paddington Bear or Winnie the Pooh when you were little, it was a character that you loved. For me, when I was young, my favorite character was the Wart in The Sword and the Stone, which is the first book of The Once and Future King by T.H. White, which was a book that shaped my writing life, my living life, everything. I loved that book. And so I think people relate to that idea of falling for a character in a book. So that was like one of those strokes of luck that worked for me. The fact that there is an existing fandom of people who know what it's like to fall for Jamie and are interested in seeing if my book does that justice or not are out there, and they're talking to me and spreading the word, and it's just been amazing. I've done 0 advertising for this book. None. None. It's all been word of mouth.
That's awesome. Well, I know you're on a book tour right now, right? So I'm
right smack in the middle of it.
Yeah. So tell us about that. I mean, what have you done to get the word out?
Okay, so I did hire, once again, because I don't have traditional publishing behind me, I'm defaulting to what I know from how that system works. So I hired a publicist to help me through this process, and she's just been fantastic, really helpful. Her name is Rachel with Girl Friday Publicity. Gal Friday Publicity. Anyway, Rachel's just been amazing because she's helping me sort of spread the word essentially just through media as I go on this tour. So it's just been through the 2 westernmost provinces of Canada. So I started with Vancouver Island, and I did a few events on Vancouver Island. Then I drove back through the Kootenays, drove up north through Alberta, circled around north through British Columbia, and have come back down south. And now the last leg of the tour is going into the Okanagan. So it's probably, 15, 17 stops in total. Some of the events have been evening events, which are a little bit different than a daytime signing. So I've done daytime signings where I meet people in a bookstore. I think all the signings have been in a bookstore. There haven't been any in libraries. So yeah, so anyway, I meet people. Some of them have come to see me because they've heard that I'm going to be there on the radio, or but most of them are just walkthroughs in the bookstore. And I give them my postcard, you know, which is actually, I reproduced the cover of the book on the postcard. And so I give them the postcard and talk about the book a little bit. And if they're interested, I hand them the book and they read the book. And so I just talk about it. And yeah, they've been very successful. The other sort of style of event that I've done is the evening event where I do more of a talk, I do more of a reading. I talk about the writing of the book. I talk about some of the stories behind the writing of the book. Emma goes through a number of crazy adventures in this book, many of which are based on reality that have happened to me or to happen to people I know. This, you know, I mean, I'm not just Emma in this story, I'm all the characters, right? So so I don't necessarily relate to her more than I relate to anyone else, but it's been really fun to use all the things that have happened in my life. This is, you know, I'm a writer, this is what we do. We take what's happened to us and we make it bigger or exaggerate it or shrink it down, or these are all ways of, you know, putting your finger on the truth, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so the evening events are a little bit different because I run competitions too. So we have, I've been traveling around with my mummy. I meant to bring my mummy to show you, but anyway, I've been traveling around with my mummy who's wearing the kilt from the cover of the book. The kilt was handmade by the official stitch of the Seaforth Highlanders, which is a Highland unit that's stationed here in Vancouver, BC. And so their tailor, yeah, their tailor made me this amazing kilt. Normally a kilt these days takes about 20 meters of material, but he made this kilt out of 3 meters because that's what they would have used in the 17th century. So it's pretty authentic.
And is that's the you actually took a photograph of that exact kilt for the cover of the book?
Yeah, yeah. The guy that sewed it is actually the one that's wearing it on the cover. Yeah. So anyway, he was amazing, and so I had this beautiful kilt made, so I'm not going to just leave it at home, right? So I'm bringing the kilt with me. The mummy wears the kilt and also a knit tam, because we run a best legs in a kilt competition for anyone who's brave enough to either try on my kilt or show up in one of their own. And we run best Scottish knitwear worn in summer competition. So anyone who's like got the gumption to wear their Scottish woolens to my event, they get a prize, man.
That's awesome. So you kind of create this whole fun thing around your event. It's not just, you know, some boring
Totally
reading from a book, right? It's...
Yeah, no. There's hardly any reading. I mean, I read a little bit, and actually I had an event, I think one of the top events that I've had so far on this tour was in a teeny tiny little town called Hazelton. It's in the far north of BC. And it was in the library, and I expected 3 people to show up. There's actually a scene in Finding Fraser where a writer in the book goes to do a reading, and anyone who's actually a writer has experienced this, right? And he goes to do the reading, and he's a popular writer, and he's in his own country, and he goes to do this reading, and they've got 50 chairs set up, and 3 people show up, and one of them is drunk, you know? So it's like, everyone who's a writer has had this experience, right? So this is what I was expecting to happen in Hazelton. And in fact, I got a ton of people. They had to bring in more chairs, and a bunch of people came wearing their Scottish knitwear and their kilts. And so people were really getting into the spirit of it. And that's when it becomes really fun. It's an interactive experience. So it's not just someone sitting in front of the group of people perched on a stool and, you know, reading out of a book. It's an event. It's fun. We talk, we laugh. You know, we talk about our shared experiences. And yeah, it's been an awesome tour so far. So 1 more week to go.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when did you know? I mean, you know, when you first released the book, when did you know? Okay, this is something different. It's really hit off. It's really taken off.
Before the book hit, before it came out, because I released it first digitally on Amazon. And my pre-orders were freaking me out because I was getting, you know, I have a blog and I'm on Twitter and I do Facebook. I don't really like Facebook, but I do it for work. But I do like Twitter, and I blog pretty regularly. And so I was blogging about the process. I talked to a bunch of other writers who were self-published on my blog to talk about what their experience had been like. I talked to a bunch of other writers who were hybrid writers like myself, who had had the traditional experience, and about, do a little compare and contrast with what it's like to do it on your own compared with what it's like to do it with a publishing house. And we can talk about that too, because I have made some very salient discoveries during this process. But so, I talked about it a bit, and that was it. And my pre-orders were just like nuts. I was getting hundreds of pre-orders, and so I knew before it even hit. So the day that it hit, the day that the book was released on Amazon, which was May 15th, like right from the moment it was released, I knew something was different. I've never had anything like this before, so there was really an interest. Then about halfway through the afternoon, Diana Gabaldon, who has given me a blurb for the front of the book, she was the first person to read this novel. She read it in first draft. I sent it to her because, the book is an homage to her character, and I did not, and Diana does not like fan fiction written about her books, and I wanted her to see that it wasn't a piece of fan fiction, and B, that it is an homage to this character. And it's but if she was unhappy with it, I didn't really want to take it further, because that, my goal here was to say how much, my character loved this character from her book. So if she was unhappy with that, I didn't want to go forward with it. But she liked the story, and she's been very supportive all the way along, like just lovely. And so on the day that the book released, she put up a Facebook post saying that the book released. And I had a big surge in sales right there from her fan group. But that's the only mention that I believe that she's made of it so far, that I'm aware of it. And so basically it's just taken off from that. I had, this sort of tremendous interest before the book, arrived. And then she gave me that little boost on the first day. And it's carrying on right through till now. It's just been great.
That's awesome. That's fantastic.
Yeah. It's been really fun. It's been really fun. This is the main thing about this, is I decided to do this as an experiment, because I'd never self-published before. I did not have a clue what I was doing. I had to learn everything from ground zero. But I've lived in the publishing industry. It's my world for many, many years now. And so I thought, I have people around me. I don't know, but I know what questions I need to ask. So I can at least go to the people that I have around me and ask the questions, and keep asking until I ask the right question, and find my way through. And I think that has stood me in very good stead in this particular case.
That's awesome. Well, you mentioned, the differences between self-publishing and traditional publishing. So, and the lessons that you learned. So what were some of the biggest lessons you learned, maybe mistakes you made along the way that you think others could learn from?
Yeah. Well, I've made lots of mistakes. But I think the biggest lesson that I've learned is the hardest part about self-publishing. All right, first of all, the easiest part. Let's start with the easiest part, which is the easiest part in any form of publishing. And that is the writing of the book, because that's the part that feeds your soul, right? That's the part where it's just a purely joyful experience. It's just pure creation. You're getting to work on that creation. You make yourself laugh, you make yourself cry. You might show it to one or two other people and see how they react. So that, I have to say, that part of the process, and also I'm putting a very nice shine on this, because we all know, anyone who has written a book knows that it's also brutally hard. You might as well just slit your wrist and bleed onto the page. It's very hard. But if you think that the writing of the book is the hardest part, you are sorely mistaken. That is the most joyful part of this process compared to the rest of it, because the rest of it, you have to take yourself out of this world of creation, this art world, and you have to plunk yourself into the business world. And that's a really tough transition for many, many writers to make. If you're an artsy, flaky, fun, creative person, sometimes it's really tough to make that jump. Some people make it without any trouble at all, but for me personally, that is a very difficult leap to make. So, yeah. So so when I got into the publishing part of it, that was a really tough part. And that's when I was lucky enough to like surround myself with really people who are at the top of their game in the industry and ask for help from them, pay for help from them. Most of them were my friends who just said, oh no, that's okay, let me do it for you. And I would say, no, this is a business thing, we're doing this in a business-like way. And I really wanted to know what it cost. I wanted to know what the process actually was when it wasn't just somebody lending me a hand. And so that was also not so bad. The toughest part, I would have to say, the toughest difference between traditional publishing and self-publishing is distribution. That's the big issue. Obviously, when you're doing it digitally, that's not so much a problem because you can digitally sell all around the world. But I don't know what your experience has been, Tom, but my experience has been that, and it might just be my age, my advanced age, but I find that although I have many friends who have a Kindle or a Kobo or, a digital reader of some form, lots who read on an iPad, almost all of them still like to have an actual between the covers book. And that's actually why I decided to do this tour, because my distribution, I have distribution in Canada, I have distribution in the US through Ingram, but the books are not sitting front and center at a bookstore, right? If somebody wants a book, they can go into, in South Dakota, they can go into a Barnes & Noble and order one, but it's not sitting there on the shelf. And that's the part that I miss from traditional publishing, because when I was traditionally published, there is channels to make sure that happens. And at least with the initial launch of the book, that you have that wide kind of on-the-shelf distribution, and I really missed that.
Gotcha. So, I mean, how have you gotten around that issue, or I mean, have you just had to face the fact that you just have to tell readers, the best place to go is just buy it online?
Yeah. Well, no, I've gotten around it because I signed a distribution deal in the US with Ingram so that people can buy it in the US, and Ingram actually distributes, I hesitate to say worldwide, it might be worldwide, but anyway, in a lot of places, certainly North America and Europe and elsewhere. And so, if Ingram distributes to a bookstore that is anywhere in the world, you can go into that bookstore and ask for it, and they can get it for you. They can get a copy for you without any trouble at all. It takes a couple of weeks to turn it over or whatever. So that's basically a POD system. So so I think essentially they're just doing print on demand and pulling up the numbers as they need them. And so I did that. And in Canada, I have a distributor as well. But, to get my book into people's hands and into bookstores, I'm pretty much going to bookstores. That's why I'm doing the tour. So I had a month this summer that I thought, well, I'm going to get out there and meet people and put my book in people's hands and talk to booksellers. And, I think that, I have to say, regardless of whether you're self-published or traditionally published, it's so important to talk to booksellers about your book. And so whatever means that you take to do that, whether it's just going to your neighborhood bookstore and saying, hey, I wrote this book and let me tell you about it, and if you're interested, here's how you can get a hold of copies to sell, and I'll come in and sign them if you want. And making yourself accessible like that is regardless of whether you're traditionally published or self-published, is really important.
Awesome. And you didn't feel like you got any? Did you feel like those booksellers looked at you differently now that you're self-published versus when you're traditionally published?
Oh, totally. Because their system is self-publishing is unfiltered publishing in many ways. And actually, there were a few bookstores when I was setting up the tour. There were a few bookstores that requested that I pay them to appear at their bookstore. So there was a fee for me to appear at their bookstore, and it was increased if I wanted to have shelf space for the book. It increased again if I wanted to have specific shelf space at the front of the store. And there was a I actually think that that was this particular independent's way of coping with the glut of self-publishing that's out there. And there's so many people that are self-published. Well, you know, are you willing to pay to have the book on the shelves? And are you willing to pay to have the space in the store? You know, right now, I'm not in a position where I have to do that. I have a demand. There's a big demand for my books right now, which is so wonderful and exciting. And I recognize that that sets me apart. But it still made me sad for the people who are trying to get the word out, that they would have to pay somebody to do that. I would actually probably suggest that they look elsewhere rather than having to do that. It's kind of like paying somebody to read your work. There's a lot of questionable people out there that want to break, that are just completely willing to break a writer's heart and shatter their dreams, you know, for the sake of making a profit. So you have to be really careful.
Gotcha. So you basically just turned down those bookstores and moved on to something else?
Yeah, that's exactly what I did.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's always places to be cautious in business, you know, especially I think now with self-publishing and the proliferation of so many different services and companies. It's not that they're necessarily trying to rip you off, but it just, their offering might not necessarily be the best thing for you at the time.
Exactly. And I actually think that was a sort of a self-defense mechanism for that particular chain of bookstores. It was a small chain, but it was, you know, 2 or 3 bookstores that were owned by the same owner. And I actually think that they just had been, you know, it's on the West Coast. There's a lot of, this is an area where there's a high retirement community, a lot of people who have, you know, written a book and thrown something together online and want to get it out there and sell it. And so I think that they also were trying to separate the wheat from the chaff, you know, and saying, okay, well, you know, is it worth it to you to pay this amount? Because just figuring out how many books you'd have to sell to cover those costs, you know, right away, it has to be somebody who's pretty serious.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, awesome, Casey. You shared a wealth of wisdom with us today. I really appreciate it. So before you go, tell us where people can find out more about you and the work that you're doing.
Okay. Well, you can find me at CaseyDyer.com, and I'm also on Twitter at CaseyDyer. And for this particular book, Finding Fraser, we've built Emma a website because when she tells her story, Emma's a blogger. She runs a travel blog. She can't get anyone to go with her on this trip, so she decides that she's going to try to develop a blog audience. And much to her shock, she actually does develop a blog audience in this. So for fun, we created a Finding Fraser website at findingfraser.com, and Emma's blog is there, and some pictures from her journeys, and yeah, so it's so you can find out more there. And a couple of things on that site. One of the things that's happened to me with the sales of this book is that I'm getting letters from all over the world of people telling me their stories of how they found their own Fraser, and it's so cool. I'm hearing all these love stories that are so beautiful. And so what we've done is we've opened a page on findingfraser.com called Fraser Found, and people can submit their stories to Fraser Found and tell, you know, their little love story, and we'll put that up online for them. So that's something that they can find there. Or they can order a copy of the book. If they want a personalized or signed copy of the book, they can get that at Fraser Found at findingfraser.com as well.
That's awesome. So yeah, so we'll have all the links to the website, findingfraser.com, and your books all at publishingprofitspodcast.com. So if you're listening right now and you want any of those links, just go to publishingprofitspodcast.com, find the episode with Casey Dyer, and all the links will be right there for you.
Excellent.
So, thank you so much, Casey. I really appreciate it.
It was really nice to talk to you, Tom. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, have a great day.
Yeah, you too.